Okay, welcome everyone. We are live once more. This session will be streamed to LinkedIn, to YouTube, and to my podcast, where this will be available in a week's time or so. Today's topic is building analytics teams, and it's really about harnessing analytics and artificial intelligence to create a more successful business environment. And I am very pleased to say I'm joined here today by John Thompson. John is someone we were just talking. We've seen each other so many times in this space, working in very similar areas. And what we are talking about today is really how do we create analytics teams. And you've been an analytics leader now for a very long time. You're also a best-selling author, and you are a keynote speaker and a data science thought leader and someone that's now been working in this space for such a long time. I think your current job is that you're the global head of advanced analytics and artificial intelligence for CLS. So first of all, welcome, John, really good to have you with me.
Thanks, Bernard. So happy to be here. I'm very excited, as we said before, that we've been in the same space for so many years that it's great to meet you.
No, absolutely. I feel the same. So obviously your world has changed, like all of our world has changed. How are you at the moment? How has the global pandemic affected your life and your way of working?
Well, it has affected all of us, and in some in a very negative way. And my heart and feelings go out to those who have lost loved ones and who have been physically damaged by the coronavirus. So my feelings go out there. Myself, it's really gone back to the future, I guess. I've worked from home for 25 years. So being here in the third floor of my house and doing things on video and Zoom and WebEx and all the other platforms feels very natural to me. CSL, we're working harder than ever since we're a plasma-based business and an essential business. Our plasma centers around the world are collecting plasma all the time, and we're manufacturing therapies as fast as we can to help people who are affected by rare and unusual diseases. So working from home, which I like a lot. And then just trying to do our best to help people around the world.
Wonderful. So for anyone listening that doesn't know you yet, maybe you can give us a very brief overview of how you spend your time, what you do at the moment. You've been in the analytics space for such a long time, have such a strong portfolio and a lot of experience. So how do you spend your time nowadays?
Yeah, that's a great question. Most of my days are spent talking to executives, senior managers and managers at CSL. I have set up, as you said, Bernard, I've been in this not in the analytics market for so many years, just a couple in the pharmaceutical industry. But what I've done is I've explained to our global leadership group and our senior managers and managers that I have a open door policy. So anytime someone has an idea that they think is an analytics idea, I tell them, come to me immediately. Don't overthink it. Don't try to sand off the rough edges. Just come and talk to me. Just show up. So I spend a fair amount of my time fielding calls and being on Zoom and Teams and all the other platforms, discussing ideas people have. And sometimes they show up and it's really just a dashboard or a report. And I have a team that does that, and I have them build those dashboards and reports, and away they go. And other times, there are ideas that are game-changing, that really could change the effectiveness, the efficiency of manufacturing, our supply chain, logistics, how we work with donors and patients. So I spend most of my time listening to people telling me ideas about analytics.
Great. Sounds good fun.
It is. It's great.
Good. Anyone who is now joined this live stream, feel free to say hello. Let us know what you think about the conversation. And also feel free to ask any questions. We're trying to make this as interactive as we can. We've we always have a completely global audience. So let me just pull in a few people from all over the world. So I've got Duha from Tunisia. Really good to see you. Thank you for joining. I've got Maria from Ecuador, from India. We've got Monica from Barcelona. Really good to see you. Angelo from Angola in Africa. Lamek from Kenya. So it's really good to see a completely global audience. Paulus from Namibia, from Nanja from Madagascar, which is really good. We've got people from all over the US. We have Carmen from the Bahamas, Javier from Spain. So it's wonderful to see this Candy from Hong Kong. So lovely. As I said, keep this going. Let us know where you're from, and if there's anything we can do to help you, that would be useful. Let me just. I've got so many questions and comments coming in, which is wonderful.
That's great.
Yeah. Okay. So the content of today's live stream is building analytics teams, which is also the title of your new book. So maybe you can give us an overview of what really inspired you to write a book on building analytics teams.
Yeah, it's it's a passion of mine. It's something that I got into over 30 years ago. I was building systems at a large transportation company in the United States, and it just struck me that everything that we do is around data, and making sense of data should be something that we were all focused on. And I just, from then on, I just really wanted to work on nothing but analytically oriented systems, and that's what I've done for the past few decades. So in 2017, I was flying all over the world for Dell, and I was meeting with non-technical C-level executives, and I found that there was a real reticence, a real tightness with them when I talked about analytics. So I started asking them why do you feel this way? And they said, well, I don't understand who to hire. I don't know how much it costs. I don't know how much to pay them. I don't know how many of them to hire. I just don't know anything about this area. Mm-hmm. So I thought, I'll write a book, which was the first book, Analytics, How to Win with Intelligence, for them. So I wrote the book, sent it out. It was a bestseller on the Amazon Analytics category it's been in the top 20 for the last 3 years. So then I started thinking about the complement. All right, so I've got the executives who understand what to do, but what about the people who are actually building analytics teams, things that I have done over and over again over the decades? And I thought, all right, I'm going to write a book for people who need to hire data scientists, manage data scientists, and work as part of an entire enterprise ecosystem with an analytics team. Because what I have found over the years is that analytics teams are different. They are not like any other team in the world and any other team in the organization. So I wanted to take some time and share that knowledge that I've gained over these 30 plus years on how to do it and how to do it right.
Very good. So why do companies need analytics teams? Especially as the world is changing so rapidly, we now have self-service environment where individuals can analyze their own data. We now have a lot of software as a service offering where you can simply go to companies like Microsoft and IBM and Amazon and others and say, okay, you analyze this information for us. What would be your response to this? Does every company really need an analytics team? And what do they do?
I think they do, at a certain size, of course. And if you're really interested in improving your business on a significant way, then you do need an analytics team. You're right, Bernard. There's a lot of great software out there from Microsoft and Amazon and different providers, many of the software providers that I've worked with over the years. And I do think that if you are doing simple dashboards and reports and historical reviews of information, that's mostly business intelligence. And that really has become a self-service environment. So Power BI, ClickSense, Tableau, all those tools do a great job. Plotly, You can really do some really intriguing reports with those kind of tools. The things that we do, advanced analytics, take into account beginning at descriptive statistics, moving into predictive applications, prescriptive applications, simulation, and optimization. So when I talk about advanced analytics, those are the things that I'm talking about that we focus on. So if you want to have someone come in and look at the history of your forecast and how it's worked over the years and how you can forecast better and what the future looks like, you need an advanced analytics team.
Very good. So what makes a successful analytics team? So have you got any really good examples of companies that got this right, that have built a really successful analytics team?
I do, as a matter of fact. Dell has done a really great job with analytics, and Dell is one of those companies. I worked there for a few years and ran the advanced analytics software group. Dell is a really intriguing company because it's very understated. They do a lot of great work, and they generally don't talk about it too much. So, they've done some really intriguing things around laptop reliability and serviceability, and they've done a good job on looking at data and then creating offerings for consumers and for enterprises that make the experience better for them. So I think Dell has done a really good job on it. I'd like to give myself and CSL a call out. I think we've done a good job on it over the last couple of years. And we've looked at some really intriguing things, like we've built a neural net based application that forecasts the volume of plasma that will come through the nearly 300 donation centers in the United States by the day for the next 2 years. So any manager in the CSL plasma business can go look at any individual center and look at the volume forecast out into 2 years into the future. And our next iteration is that we will take it down to the hour. So we'll forecast the volume of plasma that will come through every center for the next 2 years by the hour. And some people go, it's kind of overkill. What do you need that level of detail for? Well, in the plasma business, one of the largest costs is people. So if we forecast when the donors are going to be coming in the door, we can actually schedule labor better.
Very good. What do you see as the key challenges then that organizations face when they want to build a high-performing analytics team, and how can those challenges be overcome?
Great question. I think the first one is the misperceptions or misconceptions from senior executives that an analytics team is just like a team that's putting in an enterprise resource planning system or a customer relationship management system. They're not. They're far, far apart. Technology teams, the teams that put in servers and connect to Amazon Web Service, AWS, and things like that, they're built predominantly and driven predominantly on effective execution. And we all want to effectively execute, there's no doubt about it. But advanced analytics teams, to be successful, run more like a creative team, more like an artistic and design team than they do an IT team. So you need to give the advanced analytics team, the data scientists, a chance to collect a wide range of data, bring it together, try hypotheses, fail, come up with things that work, and then work through the process of modeling and then eventually into putting advanced analytic models into production. So I think one of the biggest problems organizations have is they say, oh, well, we had someone that installed a server last week, and we'll have them build a neural network too. It doesn't work that way.
No. And do you see any other challenges? What I see when I work with companies on analytics teams and building the competencies within their own organization is actually accessing the right talent is a real tricky thing to do. Do you see that as well? And do you have any advice on how you could overcome this and how you address this? I guess what I see in the analytics world is that the trailblazing companies around analytics and AI, the Facebook, the Amazons, the Googles, they find it really easy to recruit because they have attractive propositions, they have the budgets. What do other companies do? How do they overcome some of those challenges?
You're absolutely right, Bernard. The Facebooks, Googles, Amazons, they all have a reputation for being forward-looking and treating their employees with certain perks and keeping them engaged and interested. So they do have a lot easier, a much better and easier time recruiting. For regular companies that want to start an analytics team, one of the things that I have talked about and talk about extensively in the book is something I call a personal project portfolio. Advanced analytics teams and data scientists have Ferrari brains. They're going a million miles a minute, and they really want to think about really interesting and difficult problems. You really can't just give them a project and say, go do this. And that generally they get bored. They need to be distracted. They have to look at different things. So the way I work with teams is that I give them, each data scientist has 2 major projects that'll last somewhere between months and years to get done. And they have a set of small service requests that'll take a day or 2 or something like that. And they have the complete authority and responsibility to take care of those projects, all the way from data acquisition to integration, feature engineering, modeling, getting it into production, stakeholder management. So each data scientist in my team runs their own little business. Now, what they do day to day, I don't micromanage them. I don't call them up each day and say, hey, what are you focused on? If they're working on a decision tree one day and all of a sudden they run into a roadblock and can't get anything done, they can go over and work on some other project where they're just acquiring data and, move the neurons around, the firing in their cranium, so they can stay engaged and interested. And I think that's one of the things that really smart managers do, is they help data scientists be enthused, engaged, and interested in their work.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I think this is absolutely vital, just to make sure you keep hold of people and keep them engaged in this whole process. When I work with organizations, we often apply this 80-20 rule, where we say, okay, 80% of the projects that you work on should be driven by your most strategic needs. And obviously you want some involvement in them, but then 20% of them could be their own projects that they feel excited about. I think this is a good balance.
Yeah, we've there's a gentleman out there writing, and he writes a newsletter called The Sequence Edge, and I've been reading that for the last few weeks, and lately he's been talking about probabilistic programming languages like Prion and things like that. Really intriguing stuff. So we just had a team meeting the other day where I threw down a little friendly challenge to the team, and I said, all right, who's going to be the first person to build a Bayesian neural network? Which these things are crazy. I mean, I don't even know how they work, let alone understand what kind of problems we could use. But, and like you said, we give 20% of the time for the data scientists to just do stuff. Just go off and grab some data and see if you can make this work. And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. Come back to the group and say, hey, I tried this. I can't figure it out. I don't understand how it works. So, we're very open in my group to having people do exploration and analytics and just trying stuff. So, maybe it works, maybe it doesn't.
And do you think other companies have the same luxury, that they can give people the freedom to run off with projects that might not deliver true business value?
I don't think it's a luxury, to tell you the truth. I think it's a necessity, especially for people in the data science field. The market's hot. You cannot guarantee that you're going to hold on to a data scientist, a really good data scientist, unless they're engaged and enjoying their work. If they're not engaged and enjoying their work, they can walk across town and probably get a 20% raise and start tomorrow. I think it's crucial that they are able to spend some of their time exploring new technologies, new algorithms, new approaches, and who knows, you may find the next breakthrough there. It's hard to say.
So when it comes to analytics teams, one of the questions I often grapple with and get asked a lot is, what are the job roles that you should include in your analytics team? Do you have a breakdown that you would recommend? Do you need a chief data officer? And what's the balance of job roles that you would want to see in a really high performing analytics team?
Yeah, there's a fair amount of dialogue about the chief data officer, chief analytics officer. Those roles are starting to pop up more and more now. In the book, I actually put a question out on LinkedIn and asked which one do you go for? And the dialogue, I think it was the longest running and had the most responses I've ever seen on LinkedIn for at least anything I've started. So I actually took that entire dialogue out of LinkedIn and lightly edited it and put it in the book, which is the first time I've ever done that. And the editors were a little twitchy about it, but everybody agreed that it was fine to do, so we did it. And the consensus seems to be that if you're doing chief analytics officer, that's more of a offensive role. Chief data officer is more of a defensive role. You're just trying to figure things out as opposed to doing things. So there's all sorts of dialogue about that. I think there'll be more and more of those roles hired. But the way I look at an analytics team is there's two different poles on a continuum. One is an artisanal team and one is a modular team. The artisanal team is what I have at CSL. The data scientists own their own personal project portfolio. They manage all the projects. They deal with the senior executives. They deal with subject matter experts, third-party providers, and they do everything. That they're all enclosed in their world. Now, a modular team is more like a factory. You have a group of people that do data acquisition, people do data integration, feature engineering, modeling, working with getting systems into production. And then, of course, there's a hybrid model. We have our artisanal team, and then you have a modular team where you're doing data acquisition and integration and feeding up into the artisanal team. So I've seen teams be effective as small as 10. With a variety of different people smattered amongst those roles. And I've seen them, up into the hundreds of people. I actually saw one team that was into the thousands. I really don't think they were very successful, but they had a lot of people. So that's generally how I see them structured.
Yeah, it's interesting. Do you see roles that are hybrid roles, so between business and the analytics team, to make sure that the analytics team is well connected into the organization? So one of the things we did when we developed the data strategy for Shell is that we created data translators, so roles that were mainly business people with a good grounding in analytics, who could then communicate with the analytics team and make sure that there's a really good connection into the business. Is this something you would propose, or how have you handled the relationship between the analytics team and the business in some of your previous roles of building those teams?
Right. As you noted, it's critical that the translator role has to be there. We never do a project, and for as long as I can remember, we've never done projects at Dell and all these other places I've worked. We don't do projects unless we have a subject matter expert from the business assigned to that team. And in some cases, you go to a team and they say, hey, I want to do this analytics project and we think it's interesting and we want to do it. Then we explain that they're going to have to be in at least a meeting a week for the next 4 months, 5 months, 6 months, whatever it is. Because we, on my team, are math and analytics and data people. We don't understand biopharmaceuticals. That's just not our forte. So we need a translator or a subject matter expert as part of the team for the team to be successful. So we would never undertake a project unless we had someone like that, attached to the team.
Good. I'm just looking through some of the questions we've had. Let me pull in one here from Eileen saying, have you got any examples of companies where the analytics teams are actually understood as creatives rather than report writers?
Yeah, I think the clues, if you're interviewing with people and you get the sense that there's no tolerance for experimentation or for trial and error, then more than likely they're not going to be as lenient toward the creative side as you'd like them to be. Other clues are, how much innovation do you see coming out of the organization? It's very interesting that Google bought the company DeepMind right there in the UK and has left them pretty much at an arm's length. So there's a few different things you can see. You can see how much innovation they generate. You can see what the tolerance is for failure. Talk about creative and design-based principles and see how they react.
Very good. In terms of some of the challenges then of creating those teams, or how do you go about creating analytics teams? So if someone is starting from scratch, thinking, okay, I now need to build a really good analytics team for my company, what do they need to do in practice, and what are some of the things they need to think about? How do they approach this?
It's a great question. It is the premise of the book. So I've written 100,000 words on that. So I'll try to narrow it down as fast as possible. But it's a blend, of going out and hiring people and connecting yourself with the right people internally.
Yeah.
So, you want to make sure that you're getting air cover from the senior executives, that you got the right budget. You want to make sure that the line of business executives or line of business managers who run the supply chain, run the manufacturing operations, run clinical, run, all these areas are interested in what you're doing and want to collaborate with you and share their people with you. You can go at it, as I said, the artisanal approach, or the modular approach. If you have a few people that you can hire and you have a good budget, I would go for the more experienced data scientist and get 2 or 3 of them. If you want to build a very big team, then I would go with a modular approach and get people who are good at data acquisition, data integration, and those things, and then, hire them out. I tend to believe that the artisanal approach works better if you're starting from scratch. It's easier to hire 3 really highly qualified, experienced people rather than 30, good people that you want. So I tend to think you need to bifurcate, get connected internally, hire a few really good people, and then pick projects that have strategic importance to the corporation.
I completely agree. What's your view on using external talent as well? At the moment, I think we live in this world where it's very easy to outsource your analytics project to consulting organizations. I think for some projects, this is absolutely okay. But I think there's a real danger that you potentially outsource something that should be a core competence for your own business.
Mm-hmm.
So again, when I work with organizations, what we try to do is we find some external talent, but then put the focus on knowledge transfer to make sure that that they're working together. And I find too many organizations feel that they simply can outsource some of those analytics projects. So the question is, what's the role of external consulting companies, external talent partnerships in building analytics teams?
The framework that you've laid out there is exactly how I think about it. There are lots of people out there who are very good in analytics and lots of service providers that you can work with for sure. I tend to believe that you should not outsource projects that have a strategic advantage to your corporation.
Yeah.
If you're going to build advanced analytic models, you and I, Bernard, know very well that it's not a one and done. You're going to be updating those models. The world changes. We're in COVID. The world changed dramatically in March. We all know that, at least here in the United States, it was March. So if you're doing something that is going to make a dramatic difference to your business, you should do it internally.
Yeah.
If you have someone who's going to support your projects through data acquisition and data integration and those kind of more mundane rote tasks, outsource it.
Very good. And for me, the other discussion we often have in organizations is when you have teams distributed across the globe. So sometimes they have have certain job roles that might be based in India, that might be based in Russia, and then you have a chief data officer that manages those global teams. Any advice on how to do this well?
Yeah, I'm a big proponent of the death of distance, that, people can live wherever they want to live and do the work. We always look for people who are, incredibly intelligent, ethical, honest, and intellectually curious. I think if you hire for those 3 capabilities, then it doesn't matter if they're in Uzbekistan or Tokyo or Sydney or Chicago. People that have good, strong work ethic and curiosity and intellectual rigor, you can give them work, they'll do it. You can talk to them as often as you want, and they'll generally stay on task. So if you hire the right people, I think distance is really not an issue.
Very good. I'm just looking through some of the questions here again. There was one from Sriram here saying, what's your take on the evolution of automation tools in the analytics and machine learning space and their impact on analytics teams?
Well, I think that's a great question. Thank you for it. We've lived through this before. At least I've lived through this before. We've seen it in a variety of other technology fields. You know, we've certainly reached the level in the business intelligence field where self-service is the state of the art. So most people can go off and do their own reports and dashboards and things like that. I think Auto ML and ML Studio and those kind of tools are great. They're really good for automating some of the lower end kind of activities. They're not at a point, and I'm not sure that they will ever reach a point where they're building fine-grained models that actually take into account all the different considerations. Bernard actually said it earlier. The reason that you have translators or subject matter experts involved in the business is that there are nuances to the models that have to be programmed in. And those can't come in through Auto ML and ML Studio and things of that nature. That comes from human experience and human understanding. So those tools are great and they will help broaden the market, but you will still need advanced analytics teams to build the fine-grained models.
Very good. There's so many good questions coming in here. So Judith is asking, how could companies actually build a case to consider building their own analytics team? So how do you build a business case for an in-house team versus an outsourcing of your analytics to experienced service vendors?
Great question, Judith. You know, the way I've always done it is that the people that are going to give you the budget or the people that will create the budget for you are the senior executives. And the senior executives, C-level executives, always understand return on investment and increased top line revenue or savings on the bottom line cost line. So that's how you do it. That's how you have to do it. I generally have set up all my new projects wherever I go to a new organization, so we have a strong business case and payback period in each of those projects. We don't have to do it much anymore at CSL because we've proven strong payback on everything that we've done. Everybody just assumes that's what our focus is going to be. So if you're selling sweaters, how many more sweaters are you going to sell? You know, if you're making life-saving therapies, how many more patients can you address? So you have to denominate it in the language of the executives.
No, I 100% agree with you. I think really strong business cases, linking it back to your own strategy is important, and actually making the case that data now is such an important strategic asset for organizations, and they run a real risk that they outsource too much of it, that they don't actually leverage the data for their own competitive advantage. And I think if one thing we've learned in strategy is that you don't outsource your competitive advantage to anyone.
That's right. That's right. The other thing that we've learned too is that the internal data you have is the starting point. You really need to build an ensemble of data that takes into account governmental data, third-party data, research data. You know, when you have an ensemble of data, you have a much richer area to model from. So, you know, I think you're absolutely right. You don't outsource your strategic competitive advantage, and you only augment and build on it.
How do you then lead an analytics team, or what are some of the leadership challenges around managing a team of data scientists and analytics folk?
There are challenges, that's for sure, and it's a great question. I find it to be one of the most satisfying experiences of my life is that you have a group of people in the room, and I always try to hire, so I am the least intelligent person in the room. So, you know, I'm a facilitator. I just have an MBA. I don't have a PhD, you know, those kind of things. So I enjoy getting the group together either virtually the way we do it now, or physically where we're all open and we're all sharing our ideas. So, you know, you want to make sure that you hire a team and you can facilitate a dialogue. You don't really want a prima donna in there that won't share their code, won't share their ideas, won't share their methods. But once you get a team that's open to it And typically my teams skew to the younger side of the equation. And you get people up at the whiteboard going at it. So then you don't really have a challenge managing them. You have a challenge corralling their energy and trying to keep them going in the right direction. As I said, I think hiring is a big deal, a big part of it. So if you can get a group of people that want to share and that are open, then you really don't have to manage the egos and the prima donnas and all the other, negative problems you hear people talk about analytics teams for. So I think you can construct a team that managing it is more of a joy than a chore.
That's great, and I agree. This is what it should be. Following on from them, here's Krish asking a question about the silos, that increasingly analytics projects are executed in these silos. How do you lead? How do you address this as a leader? How do you break down some of these silos?
That's a great question, Krish. What we have been doing, and I've been evolving this idea over the years, is that, we execute analytics for the people who come to us. So we do analytics for manufacturing, we do analytics for supply chain, we do analytics for our retail plasma business. But on the back end, what we are doing, and we don't really tell anybody about this, is that we're building a layer, a data fabric that's above the transactional systems, that's above any data warehouse, that is an analytical data store. I don't want to call it a database. You could call it an object, whatever you want to call it. But in that fabric, we integrate all the data. Mm-hmm. So if someone comes to us and says, hey, I'm really interested in understanding the laboratory information management system and how it relates to the manufacturing execution system, we've already integrated the data. So we can do cross-functional analytics. And what we do is we take our time and we suggest analytics to people. And we say, hey, what about looking at the laboratory information management system and the manufacturing execution system? We don't go and say, well, hey, we integrated all this data and you should be excited about it and pat us on the back. We just say, wouldn't it be interesting if you could correlate this to that? And then what you do is you lead the team along a path of where they need to go without lecturing to them or hectoring to them or saying, you're not thinking about cross-functional analytics. Well, you know what? They're not going to think about cross-functional analytics. It's really up to you to do it and to bring them along.
Yeah, very interesting. Just out of interest, then, when you build the layer, the cross-silo data object that you have, the way you call it, for me, there's a real risk when organizations do this, that they create a massive data lake and they simply dump all cross-silo data into one massive data repository. Other organizations have really stringent rules saying, okay, we're now building this cross-silo, cross-business data asset, but we need to have very clear use cases for every bit of data we're including in this. Where do you sit then? How do you do this in your own organization?
Yeah, that's sad when I hear people talk about that. What they're doing is they're just strangling the innovation. They're just cutting off any kind of opportunity by governing it to death, which is the way some people do it. Right? So it's just up to them. We are fortunate in that we have, we're kind of the Wild West in my group, and the executives understand that, so we've kind of got a reputation now that, when we show up, we've got an idea for you. We're not just showing up because we like to show up. I just had a meeting with one of the senior vice presidents and I laid out for him what I think my team should do for the next year for him. And he said, I had this epiphany last week. I can't believe that you've showed up at my doorstep. Well, we've been working on it for 3 months. We never said anything to anybody. It was just obvious. This is where the company should be going. But this gentleman owns this area. He came to the idea on his own. We just happened to, shoot where, as Wayne Gretzky would say, shoot where the puck was going to be. And, it's going to work out beautifully. We now have, sponsorship from a senior vice president, that we have all the budget we need and a year's runway to build this out. Now, obviously, we won't take a year to come up with our first results. We'll deliver results weekly, monthly as we go on. But when I laid it out for him, he was just like, wow, I can't believe you thought of this. A lot of these things are in, as some of the more spiritual people say, it's in the field. So if you can read the tea leaves or look out into the future a little bit, and that's our job, is to predict the future, isn't it? So, you can actually lead people where they want to be.
Very good. There's another question here from Sandra. I think I touched on this initially when we talked about why do you actually need analytics teams, and Sandra is asking, what do you think about off-the-peg analytics and data solutions to allow operational business people to start analyzing data without having the big budget and so on, especially in SME settings?
I think those are great ideas, to tell you the truth. I mean, to make sure I understand off the peg, that's not really a phrase I hear very often. That's kind of pre-canned.
Off the shelf, yeah.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I think it's great. I just looked at a solution 2 days ago where one of the areas came to me and said, hey, we need, to understand these key performance indicators. Can one of your teams build it for me? And I went out and looked, and within an hour, I found a solution that already had it. We had the product. It works on their data model. You can implement it in the span of a few days or weeks. I said, it doesn't make sense for us to build it. It's already built. Just go buy it.
Very good. I agree. So once you've built your analytics team, how do you then keep up the momentum? How do you make sure the team grows, it develops? What are some of the golden nuggets you can share there?
Yeah. I ran track a million years ago, and I think of it as kind of like a track meet. Sometimes you're sprinting, sometimes you're jogging, sometimes you're sitting on the bench, cooling down. So you really need to look at each data scientist and see, what they're driven by, what they're motivated by. I just had to spend the last 2 weeks encouraging a young data scientist to take some time off. He's in his apartment, he's working hard, he's a wonderful young man. I said, hey, everybody's taking vacation except for you. No, I don't think I want to take vacation. I'm just going to keep working. I'm like, dude, you are going to explode. Take a week off. And, then the day later I got a note, hey, I'm taking a week off. I'm like, great. So you look at each individual, at least I look at each individual, see how they're doing physically, emotionally, in the team, how they're collaborating, give them some time to, idle down and relax. Then also you get people who get into ruts. We've got a few people that have been working on decision trees for a while. They're getting a little, edgy about that. They want to work on some neural nets. We're going to throw them some projects where they're going to do some neural net work. Other people are working on simulation and optimization. They're getting a little bored with the theoretical nature of it. They want to get back and do some hardcore statistical work. We'll move them back in that area. So it's, you have a great deal of latitude as a data science leader to give people intellectual stimulation. And you just have to watch and see and ask, hey, is this getting to be a little bit dull? Yeah, I'm really kind of tired of working on this area. Well, Jack wants to work on that area. So why don't you give it up and move over here, and he's going to take over this. And you get peer review too, natural peer review. If you have someone working on, let's say, pricing for 2 years, they get a little stale, they get a little bored, and they get a little lazy at sometimes with their code. So you take them out, put them somewhere else, put someone else in, and you get a whole bunch of new, fresh ideas. So that's generally how I do it.
Yeah, good. And I guess training and development is a really important component of this as well, because the pace of change of new tools, new skills is so rapid in this space. Do you give people complete freedom to develop their own career paths and learn new skills, or is there a more strategic guidance? Okay, there are new tools coming up. There's some exciting stuff happening in machine learning and neural networks. You better focus a bit on this. How do you handle that?
Yeah, it's a great question. We do a little bit of all things. I'll give CSL a shout out. CSL just redid in the last 2 years our career paths. So, you no longer have to be a data scientist and then jump over to management to continue to grow, compensation wise and experience wise. You can stay a data scientist and continue making money, moving all the way up. Of course, you can move over to management if you want, but you don't have to anymore. We just went through 2 different trainings. One was on presentation training, where we brought in a coach, and I didn't even attend it. So our data scientists had to present to this coach and learn about presentation training. Another one we did was around collaboration. And then I just threw out the idea of this Bayesian neural network. It's kind of like red meat to the lions, really. I just kind of dropped it in the middle of the team and said, who wants to go for that? So that's a little bit of, little competitive training for the team. And then we also do, we'll pay for Coursera or Udemy or, any online courses. And of course, being an enterprise global corporation, we pay for people's MBAs and, those kind of things as well. So I'm a big believer in lifelong education, lifelong learning, and curiosity. So I can't remember the last time someone came to me and said, I want to take a class, or I want to take some time off, or I want to go to the seminar. And I said, no, I'm a real believer that everybody should be learning all the time.
Very good. This just prompted another question where I think a big challenge is when you recruit analytics people and data scientists into your organization is that I believe in order for them to be most effective is they need to have a really good understanding of your business, of your industry. In terms of training, how important do you see that in terms of training analytics teams in your own business environment? Mm-hmm. And I also see this the other way around, that I think is really important to upskill everyone in the company, so all the business users, all the operation people in data literacy and making them understand a bit more what data can now do. So how do you address that?
I think those are great points, and I agree with the framework that you laid out there, Bernard. Generally, what we do is, as I said earlier, we hire people that don't have any understanding of the industry whatsoever. Mm-hmm. So we don't look for pharmaceutical or biopharmaceutical data scientists. We just look for good data scientists. Then what we do is we dump them into projects with subject matter experts, and they learn on the job. If there are seminars and different additional ways to learn, or if there's the additional training that other areas are offering to subject matter experts or people in operations, we send our data scientists to that as well. But we think that the beginning of their exposure or immersion is best done on the job. Mm-hmm. We have had a number of data scientists sent into various areas, and just because they didn't understand the field, they found basic flaws in processes because they just asked the question, this logically doesn't make any sense. Why do we do this? And they're like, oh, that's a mistake. It's like, oh, okay. Because many people who had been experienced and had expertise in the industry would have just overlooked it and assumed that it was right. So that's the way we do it. But I think everybody, as I said, should be taking all sorts of different training internally and externally.
Yeah, I agree. There's a really good question coming in from Niraj, and he's saying that with data obviously comes a lot of responsibility. Should you hold data scientists to a higher level of accountability and responsibility? I guess what he's touching on is the ethics around using data and how you address this. So do you have an ethical code? How do you make sure you hold people to account, and do you feel that data scientists should be held to a higher account than other people in your organization?
I think that I want to make sure I speak carefully here. I think the data scientists should be held at the same level of responsibility and accountability as everybody who handles data. They should be more skilled. They should have a better understanding of how to handle data and what to do with it. I think the level of responsibility and accountability is the same across the board, but the skill level is different. In our organization, we have very clear policies on how to handle data. Personal identifiable information, personal health information. None of that stuff ever ends up in any of our analytical systems. We always strip it out before we do any analytical work. I do believe, being part of a biopharmaceutical company, we are held to a very strict standard on how we handle information, and we take that very, very seriously. So the best way for your organization to operate effectively and efficiently is to have clear policies, just so everybody knows what they should and should not be doing. And everybody needs to be educated on it. Sometimes we grumble about the internal education that we have to take, but it's in the data area, it's absolutely imperative that we take those classes and we understand how to handle that data.
Yeah, and some people argue that there should be actually a professional oath that you take as a data scientist, a bit like what accountants do and lawyers do. Do you think that would be a good idea?
I don't know. I think people who are going to act ethically will act ethically, whether they said the words or not. It can't hurt. I would certainly take the oath. I certainly believe that we should be held to a higher standard of ethics and responsibility when we're handling people's data. But, the people that are going to be bad actors, no matter if they took the oath or not, they're going to do what they're going to do.
If you were to summarize then some of the points we've discussed here, and you said these are my top 3 tips or my top bits of advice for anyone creating a successful analytics team, what would your 3 top tips be?
Hire well, and we talked about that. And the corollary of that is fire fast. If you're not going to do a good job on hiring and you've got someone that's not working out, move them on. That's the 2 things you should do. Be connected with the strategic owners of the business and spend a significant amount of time with your team and with the people who are interested in analytics in your organization. Set up a way for you to be connected with those people. My wife told me this years and years ago. She goes, because I tend to be a data guy, an analytics guy. I tend to be in my head a lot. She said, John, no good things are just going to come to you because you sit in your office and work. Good things come from people. You need to be around people. I'm like, okay, I get it. So I think those would be the top things I would say.
Very good. And building those connections then into the business, do you have any advice on how you do this, or how do you do this in your own organization?
This is a tough environment. COVID is definitely a challenging environment. When I started at CSL, in the first year, I had 600 meetings, 600 in-person meetings around the world. And I went and I evangelized what analytics were and what data could do and what we could do. There's no, we do it via Zoom and Teams and all the other platforms now, but there is no substitute for actually sitting down in a room or on a session with someone and asking them, what are your challenges? How can I help you? If you ask those 2 questions, you are definitely going to have a better relationship with someone who is maybe they're in Madagascar. Maybe they're running a plant for you there. Maybe they're in Singapore or Tokyo or Melbourne, but they need to know that you care about their problems. And that's the only way I know how to do it.
Yeah, no, and what I've seen in organizations done well is where they build virtual environments, where they have chat groups and where they have virtual events, where they make sure people get together and have those conversations.
Yeah, exactly.
Very good. Then looking ahead, what future are you seeing for analytics and for analytics teams? What are your predictions looking ahead in terms of how analytics will evolve, how analytics teams will evolve, and are there some things that you are excited about or worried about looking ahead?
I'm excited about analytics. I always have been and always will be. I generally get the question, in any kind of, talk I do or session I have is that, when is artificial general intelligence going to be here? When is, Arnold Schwarzenegger and Terminator and Skynet coming about? And I have a very specific answer. It's 150 years from now. And I've thought really long and hard about this, that it's taken us 50 years, 60 years to get to a point where we can have Siri maybe answer a question for us. It's another 150 years before we have to worry about any dystopian future. So it's not going to be when you and I are around, Bernard. It probably won't be when our kids are around. It'll be our grandkids that have to worry about that. But, the shortage of talent, the plethora of data, the amount of good we can do in the world, those things just every day I want to get up and do more with data and analytics. I think that it's an exciting field. And that's why I spend so much time with our local high school, with our universities around the world, talking about analytics education and curricula. I just think we have to do a better job at helping our young people know that math and data is the future, and they need to be good at it. They need to be at least competent at it. So I'm excited. I don't think we have a dystopian future in the near term in any sense at all. And I think that analytics will become, and it already to some extent is, it'll be almost like the light switch. When we walk in a room and we flip on the light switch, electricity comes on, light comes on. We don't even think about it. We are going to have analytically enriched systems that help us through every part of our day, and we won't even think about it. Mm-hmm. So that's what I see the future being.
Wonderful. There's one more question I think that would be useful to discuss. So Rajendra is asking, any advice for newbies that want to get into this data science and analytics space? Have you got any advice on how to do this, especially when you come from a different field or a different background?
Yeah, one of the things that I do look at in people's LinkedIn profiles, I don't look at too many resumes anymore. I usually look at LinkedIn profiles. So there's a shout out for LinkedIn, is that you should be going on, the online class platforms, Coursera, Udemy, all those out there, and take as many classes as you can in data science and data handling and statistics and predictive analytics. That matters. It matters to me as a hiring manager. And then, like I said, I tend to skew towards hiring people who are younger in their career. I don't mean to be biased against people who are a little bit older. I'm a little bit older. But I tend to want to hire people who don't have much experience. So even if someone inside CSL came and said, I want to be a data scientist, and they had taken all the academic curriculum, I might actually give them a chance to come in and be a junior data scientist. So the field is burgeoning. We don't have enough people. So take the classes, do your own projects, go on Kaggle competitions, teach yourself how to be a data scientist, and you might run into someone who will give you a chance.
Yeah, I 100% agree. And I think the barriers to entry are breaking down so quickly that lots of those courses are now available for free. You might have to pay for a certification at the end, but as long as you have the knowledge, you can then go onto online platforms like Kaggle, where you can actually apply your skills and use it and build up a really strong portfolio without having to spend any money.
Absolutely. That's true. And, we talk a lot about data science and data scientists, and the sexiest job, in the world 2 years ago or whatever it was. But sometimes people think they want to be a data scientist, and they start doing it and they find out, I hate this stuff. I really don't like it. So try it. If you like it, then that might be great. And if you don't, then just walk away from it.
I agree. John, thank you so much for coming on, and that was such an enjoyable conversation. I
really enjoyed it.
I could go on for hours now.
Days.
We'll do this again.
Absolutely.
Anyone who wants to re-listen to any of my LinkedIn lives, John just mentioned that data scientists were called the sexiest job of the 20th century. The person that wrote the article, Tom Davenport, was with me on a LinkedIn Live last week. So you can watch all of those conversations that I have with amazing people from all across the world on my YouTube channel, or you can subscribe to my podcast where you can listen to them whenever you want to. John, thank you so much for your time today. Have a good day, and we'll speak soon.
Thank you. Bye-bye.